Serving their community is who they are because they love where they live. REMAX 3D Real Estate is proud to bring you Heart of Greenville, a video series dedicated to celebrating all the wonderfully great things about Greenville, Texas. On every episode, Dennisha Denney will share Greenville's story through the stories of people who call Greenville home. This is Heart of Greenville.
Thank you so much for watching Heart of Greenville. Our show would not be possible without our sponsors, so I want to give a quick shout out to REMAX 3D Real Estate and Triton Networks. Triton Networks is a one-source communication provider. They provide businesses with data, the cloud, network security, and voice. REMAX 3D Real Estate serves Hunt County and all of the surrounding counties for all of your buying and selling needs. Our guest today was Pastor Paul Blue. He's the pastor of Family Fellowship here in Greenville. He's also my own personal pastor where myself and my family attend service every week. I wanted you to get to know him, not only because he's our pastor, but because he's been a part of Greenville for many, many years, actually since the 3rd grade. Here's my conversation with Paul. Hey y'all, I'm Dennisha Denney, your host of Heart of Greenville, and today we're at the Landmark on Lee Street on the 3rd floor at the Landing. And my guest today is Mr. Paul Blue. How are you today, Paul?
I'm good. Doing good, thank you.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show.
Glad to.
Like literally within a few hours notice.
Yeah. I got a kind of a last minute text, but like I said before, I don't mind coming off the bench. I was always good at that.
Well, I was thinking, okay, who can just talk off the cuff? And I was like, Paul. Paul can do that. He gets up every Sunday at our church and gives a sermon. But then before we were talking about all the prep work that actually goes into your sermons every Sunday.
Yeah.
So I know you because my husband and the kids and we've all been coming to Family Fellowship for over 20 years now. Mm-hmm. And so I know a lot of your story, and there are a lot of people who know you because you've been here for a long time.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people who don't,
yeah.
And they're also looking for a church. And so I just want people to get to know you.
Okay.
That's the purpose of our show today, is for people to really get to know the people that live and work here and really get to know you.
Yeah.
So I want us to talk about church because we love our church.
Okay.
But I want them at the end of this to know more about our pastor,
okay.
Paul Blue.
All
so
right.
Let's talk about, how did you get to Greenville?
Okay, so this is a great story, and I will try to make this part quick. My dad was a pastor in Huntsville, Alabama, mm-hmm. and this is 1973. And he had just left that church. We were driving through Greenville to go to Odessa, where my grandmother lived, and we were going to be staying with her for a while. And my dad told my mother as we drove through Greenville, "There's a church here that's looking for a pastor, but I wouldn't take it."
What?
And we drove right on through. Speaking of what at that point was Lamar Baptist Church, which of course is now in Family Fellowship. And so he had heard rumors about that this church ate preachers, right?
Oh.
And so and he had kind of gotten hurt a little bit at his last mm-hmm. church, and so he was like, "I'm just not doing that." So we go and we move in with my grandmother in Odessa for a few years, and so my dad was looking for what was going to be next for him, and his home church pastor told him, "You're never going to be able to find anything because you're not willing to go wherever God leads you." And my dad said, "Well, sure I am." And he said, "You're not willing to go to Greenville."
Oh.
And so anyway, so my dad called the church at Greenville and said, "I'm not looking to pastor, but I know you need someone. I'll come and fill in if you want me to." And so he came and
that must have really laid heavy on his heart.
Yeah,
I think to call.
I think so. He had such a huge respect for his home pastor. Mm-hmm. My dad had a not a great childhood, and so this man had made had a lot of impact on him. So when he told him that, it weighed on him. So he made the call and said, and again, he was still kind of being only halfway. "I don't want to be your pastor, but I'll fill in."
Right.
And so they had him come, and so he filled in, and ultimately the church called him as their pastor. So that's how I got here. I was in 3rd grade and started at Lamar School, my brother and I, and my sister was, she would have been, I guess, in 7th grade, and so she was in the junior high. So that's how we got to Greenville.
Man, so Amy was in 7th grade.
Yes.
That had to be hard for her to move during those middle school years.
Yeah, and of course, I would love to tell you a whole lot more about her feelings, but I mean, you kind of know her story.
Yeah.
She was killed in an automobile accident when she was 20, so, I was a 9th grader, so I have lived so much more of my life without her than I did with her that, honestly, it's sad to a degree, but that's a distant memory for me, you know.
Right.
But I'll get eternity to be with her.
Yes, and can we talk about it for a minute?
Absolutely.
What that experience was like for you. I mean, I've heard your mom and dad
Yeah.
talk about it,
Yeah.
but I don't know if I've really heard from you what it was like to get that phone call that your sister had been
Yeah,
killed.
so she was actually traveling with a singing group from her college, and they were coming home back. She was at a college in Arlington. They were coming home late, around a little after midnight, and they were in Grand Prairie. They were 10 miles from exiting off the interstate, and the right front tire blew, the van rolled over. Where she was sitting was the reason she was the only one that lost her life in that accident. So obviously when the phone rang, I was asleep. My parents took the call, and they got the call right after midnight. And I actually just asked my dad about this not long ago. You know what? Because they came and woke me up at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and I said, what did y'all do? And he said, we just held each other and cried. What else do you do?
Right.
We cried out to the Lord and all that. And so anyway, so
I can't imagine processing that, honestly.
Yeah,
I mean, I really can't.
And I think even still processing it, I think maybe that's why it took me so long that probably took me, 30 years or so to ask them, what did y'all do? Because you
Right.
just, I don't know, you think through some of those things, but then you also, I don't think you do it on purpose, but you block those things out so you can move on. So,
Right.
so they come and they wake me up at 5 in the morning, and let's see, I said I was a ninth grader. That was in October, and I think that probably I was in, starting that cycle, so denial first, I'm
Right.
sure, because I didn't have really any response, I didn't burst
don't-
out crying, anything like that, and of course it's also early, and so then after that, for people that have lost someone close to them like that, they know exactly what I'm about to say is you feel like it's a dream, right? This is not happening. I'm going to wake up. And, you just never wake up. And so you have to go day to day. And so I don't know why you make the decisions that you do in times like that. But so I went to school that morning.
You did?
I did, which I know makes no sense. My brother and I both went to school that morning.
Did y'all choose to do that?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. Of course,
so-
our parents said, absolutely, you can stay home. And I specifically remember saying, I don't want to sit here and think about this all day.
Right.
I just want to go and go about my routine. And so I went to school, and at about, and so I know certain people knew, like I had a friend from church, and his dad found out and told him, so he knew. But I couldn't tell you one thing about that whole school day, and I didn't make it through the whole day. About lunchtime, one of my mom's best friends came and said, "Hey, do you want to go?" And so myself and I got that friend of mine, and we left school and went to eat lunch, and then I went home. And
Sure.
I guess, I don't know, I probably should have just stayed home, but who.
But you don't know what to do.
No, you absolutely. There's no guidebook for that.
No.
Especially as a parent of a 20-year-old, and then of course as a ninth grader, I didn't know what to do. I promise you, I didn't want to just go to school.
Right.
But I wanted to shut all that away, so that it didn't really happen. And if I go to school and get about my business, maybe maybe it goes away. But obviously it never does.
No, it doesn't. I'm sure that never goes away. How was it for your parents? I mean,
Yeah.
How do you handle that when you lose a child, but you still have your other two
Yeah, I
children?
think it's hard. Obviously, I don't know how. There's so much of their private life in dealing with the loss of their daughter that I'm not privy to, and so their only daughter,
Right.
firstborn. So obviously incredibly challenging, but not. I shouldn't say. Not any more so than any other child, right? I mean, so you just losing your child is so challenging. But
did those emotions come back when you and Lynn had your first child, Rayanne?
no,
I mean, did that come back? I wondered sometimes if
there's so much about. about life in general that's just so totally unpredictable. And I'm sure also it just depends on how people are wired. I'm not wired that way. And, every day, every moment we have is a gift to begin with. And so, for me, I have a lot of responsibilities of things that I'm to do in this life, but it's not what I live for. Right. So so when you lose someone that you also knew the Lord, it makes heaven realer to you. Yes. And so, it's just, I would be devastated if I lost one of my kids or anybody. Right. But I didn't have a whole lot of family to begin with. Really, only had all these people that have all these multiple grandparents and uncles. And I didn't have any of that. I had a grandmother, and that was it. Oh. So I had never lost anybody. Oh. My sister was the first person I ever loved or cared about. Right. So there was nothing to fall back on. Right. That was the learning process for me.
Do you think that made you stronger? Did it make your family stronger, getting through to the other side of that?
Yeah.
And handling that?
Our family has always been very strong anyway. But, I'll kind of take one step back. You asked about my parents. It was devastating for my parents in that, and I think I actually made reference to this in a message recently, that, my dad was, as a pastor, he was empty. Mm-hmm. And you can't pour into others when you're empty yourself. And so he had to take some time and just, be out of the pulpit. And he didn't preach on Sundays. And of course, back in those days, we did Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, all that stuff. So, yes. And he just didn't. And he needed time to begin to, I guess, work through again that cycle of grief and begin to let, God fill him back up again so then he can pour back into others. So it was definitely the biggest challenge of their lives, for sure.
I'm sure. Would you put that in one of your biggest challenges too in your life?
I would, except I was a ninth grader, so it obviously was at that point. And you asking me that question almost makes me feel guilty, like I'm not saying, oh yes, it was but it was so long ago,
Right.
I just
right. But it's okay that that's your answer.
Yeah. So I guess it has to be. So more recently, my wife's dad passed away, and so because that's more recent, and because it's her dad and my father-in-law and my kid's grandparent. There's a lot more. And
you have all those years with him.
So to me, that actually feels more challenging to me, but I'm not saying it is. It's just that my sister was so long ago that it's just hard. It's hard to compare.
But it's also given you a great testimony to help other people that have gone through losing a sibling or, being able to counsel other people as they've gone through that tragedy.
And part of that is, so my wife was pregnant with our first child when her older brother, who was in his 20s, passed away.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so, so there was a brother between her older sister and then her oldest brother. Oh. And so, it was just, and of course that was much closer then to my sister's death as well. And so, while there's never anything that ever makes it feel okay, it mattered to her that I had been there before, and to kind of help her walk through that grief as well.
I found that true when I lost my dad. The people who had lost a parent, I wanted to talk to them and hear what they had to say because they had healed and gotten to a better place where you can go through life and not have that heavy hurt on your heart.
It's funny that you say that. I haven't thought about this in a long time, but there was another youth pastor in town when I was a youth pastor, and he was youth pastor at Park Street, and we met on the golf course, and he ended up losing his life to cancer. And as a very young man, and his wife also played golf with us, and so shortly after, and I was talking to her, and she was asking me how do you do this, and she was just struggling, and I'm certain I didn't have the answers that were to really make it any better for her, but she wanted to talk to someone that had been down that road before, and I think that's always, at least to some degree, comforting.
It
for
is.
somebody.
And it gives you a level of hope.
Yeah.
Because you feel like life just stops.
Yeah, for sure.
But the world keeps moving.
Yeah.
And then you have to figure out how to start moving back with it.
Yeah.
And talking to people who are ahead of you in that cycle is very helpful.
Yeah.
So when you were in ninth grade and going through all that, did you think you would become a pastor one day?
Oh, heavens, no. And a lot of, so, that makes me a pastor's kid.
Right.
And one of the things that I have told people before is I can't make up stories about what I was like as a pastor's kid, because this is where I grew up.
Right.
So I have friends and neighborhood kids and teachers and all that, and they can either verify or, deny any of that.
Yes.
So
You have to be accountable to it.
I do. And so I did some dumb things, but I tried hard not to bring, shame to my family. Yeah. And but I was not one of those that had a bad experience. Mm-hmm. Our church has always been very kind and gracious, and appreciative, I think. And so it doesn't mean that there weren't some challenging times. There were, but overall, I didn't have a bad experience. But I never felt that's the way I was wired. So if you would have asked me in 9th or 10th grade, what is it that you're going to do? I was drawn to engineering and architecture. Those were the things that I were really into. And my math grades didn't confirm that, but it's what I was interested in. And so I was kind of into that, but when I graduated high school, like many, I wasn't really certain, what was going to be next, but I did feel like that God had wired me to serve others. Mm-hmm. And so I began to pursue, whatever, I basically said, God, whatever, I'm willing to do whatever. And then I'm whispering in the back of my head, except be a pastor. But it's because I just didn't feel wired that way. And so pursued a degree in music, because that's just music's something either you have or you don't. And I had it. And so I pursued a degree in music because churches always need people that, are gifted in that area. So my undergraduate degree is a Bachelor of Science in vocal performance and music. And so in all of those things that I've done in the church, I've done every job there is in a church except music to this day.
That's so funny to me. That's the one thing you have a degree in. And
I've never used it as far as in that position. But the youth pastor at our church left shortly before I graduated high school, and so the church asked me. I was working at the YMCA in Greenville, and while I was finishing up school, and so the church asked me if they would pay me what the YMCA was paying me, would I come and just kind of work part time and help there? And so we had a music guy at the church, and so I helped him some, and then I worked some in the youth group as well. So when I graduated, they just asked me if I would stay. Oh. And so that's how I started at the church.
So you didn't need to do that?
No. I mean, I'd rather work at the church than the YMCA,
Well, true.
So that's just the way it worked out. That was the position they had. I took it as a youth pastor, and so I've done that and everything else across the board except for music. But so I just never... I never desired to be a pastor, and then came a time that when my dad was still the pastor and he was retiring, the church asked me if I would consider becoming the pastor when he retired, and I told them no.
Did you?
Yes, I did. I did, because I just didn't see myself as being good at it, for one thing. So,
how old were you when that was going on?
I guess when he started getting ready to retire, I was 35, 34, 35, and I still felt young, probably too young to be a pastor of a church of, that, I don't want to say size to certain, but magnitude and all that. And I just didn't feel...
But man, you were so well versed in it, and it wasn't a new thing for you. And
yeah, I mean, I definitely had the church DNA in me,
yes.
for sure. But to this day, I feel wired to be a supporter.
Really?
To try to help push other people and serve and assist other people. So I don't enjoy being a boss, but it comes with it,
Right.
And
so how did they How did God work this out?
Yeah, I was going to say, they didn't.
They didn't.
God
I
did.
realized as I
Yeah.
was saying this, I'm like, no, there wasn't any one person that did that. God worked
I
that
love
out.
that everybody, that's in the ministry or whatever, I guess any vocation that they didn't see themselves in has a story of how they got there.
Yes.
So after I told them no, it wasn't long that, and again, I'm not one that I believe that God audibly speaks to me, but just in one of the times that I was reading the Bible and praying, I did feel like, and I can't tell you what I was reading, but I did feel like God kind of nudged me and said, it would have been nice if you'd have prayed about that.
Oh, no.
And I had not prayed about it at all. And I just told him what I didn't want to do. And so I did, I felt like, yeah, that's fair. I didn't, and I'm probably not worth a whole lot if I don't even pray about these big life decisions.
Right.
And so, but probably is true of people all across the board. A lot of times we have in our minds the way that we want life to go. Mm-hmm. And so if there's a curveball in there, we just say no before we ever even pray about it, right, or even talk to others.
Right.
We just, and we could miss, some of God's greatest blessings. But
so true.
So I prayed about it, and I felt like this doesn't need to be my decision. This needs to be the church's decision. And so I did the safest possible thing I could do to not be the pastor, but yet giving God this nudge of, but I'm willing to put it in your hands.
This kind of sounds familiar.
Yeah, it should. Yeah. So I told them that, yes, I would allow myself to be considered, but what I did not tell them was, and I had told myself this, is I will not accept the position of pastor unless the church votes on it 100%. And anybody that's ever been to church vote knows that never happens. So I was safe, right?
I was going to say that. You thought, this is your out.
That was my out, and then that was why I did it. That, honestly, I did it because that was my out. Mm-hmm. But what it did instead was it let me know that God said, no, this is your in. Because the church voted 100%.
Wow.
And so... And I didn't like get mad or well, darn it, God.
You're like, man, I really have to do this,
you tricked me on
God.
that one. Yeah, I just I felt like this is going to have to be a God thing because I just don't feel like this is how I'm wired as a human being, and so that's how I became pastor. That was so I guess the vote was somewhere around the year 2000. I became the pastor in 2003, so that's 18 years ago.
Wow. And now we have Parker.
Yeah.
Coming up.
Yep.
And now he's the youth pastor.
Yes, he is a youth pastor. And if you ask him if he ever will pastor one day at our church, he'll say no. I guarantee you that's what he'll say.
And you're going to turn around and say, did you pray about that?
Well, I will. But, I do think, and one of the things that I've encouraged him to is you don't do anything on anybody's expectations. You find your path. And I did it because there were so many times for me that, when you get those moments of insecurity or whatever, you always wonder, okay, should I be here or am I only here because my dad was the pastor? And so, I want him to find whatever path God has for him, and there'll never be 1 second that I would ever encourage him nor discourage him in any direction that I think, as much as just try to help him find the path that God has for him.
I love that. And David's in youth now, and he has learned so much from him. And so Parker really has embraced the word and teaching that in a way that our youth understand it and can relate to it. So I'm so thankful he has said yes, at least to this point, to be a youth pastor and carry that on.
Yeah, me too. I mean, not because it's him. And I can kind of see some of the things from the other side now, because as we just said, one of the things about him is he comes in immediately and he already has our church DNA in him.
Yes.
And he understands, our function, our mission, our core values, all those things. That, when you bring in someone else, that is awesome and loves the Lord and loves the church and all that, but they have to learn those things. And so, again, looking at it now from this side of it, it is a huge advantage.
It is. Now you kind of know what your dad saw,
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
from his perspective.
Yeah.
So, and I'm so glad that preacher's still in the church.
Yeah,
And
me too.
I love going to his Sunday school class
Yeah.
and still hearing his teachings.
Yep.
And we're so thankful for the church.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're on Heart of Greenville.
Yes.
And you've been here since the 3rd grade.
Yes.
So let's talk about what you love about
Okay.
Greenville.
So 1974, that's when we moved here when I was in 3rd grade. And so 2 things that I kind of lumped them together. Every good thing that's ever happened to me in my life has happened in our church and in Greenville. So, you know, I love that I get to do, and this lumps the 2 of them together. I get to perform wedding ceremonies for little girls that I was a part of when their parents decided to have them in baby dedication.
Oh,
Things like
yes.
that to me now are very sweet. Now, again, the older I get, the more of a weepy guy I get, because when I see one of those little girls that grew up in our Sunday school, and so I was there, you know, the day she was born, and now the doors swing open and she steps through in the
Yes.
white wedding gown, you know, I get all weepy and again, I always say that to me, that's the most beautiful sight I ever see.
Yes.
And something other than my family is just, you know, one of those young ladies in that white wedding gown. And so I just love that. I love that I get to run across old classmates. And I don't get to do it as often as I would like. You know, you would think that in a town that, you know, this is not a big place.
Right.
And there's people that I just don't get to run across as often as I would like to, but occasionally I see some of them, and they'll bring up moments that for us I didn't think anything about, but were really special to them, kind of in regards to our home and them, and those are always kind of. Can I tell you one of those stories?
Yeah, tell me.
I
Yes.
can't. I'm not going to throw names out, but. And I hope that everyone will understand the point that I'm trying to make is one of my classmates reminded me of a story one time, and from elementary school, and it was one of my black classmates, and he said, "Do you know that when y'all moved here, y'all were the first and only white family that let us into your house?"
Really?
Yeah. So my dad coached our elementary school football team, and so they were my friends, you know.
Yeah.
And so I invited them over,
Yeah.
and they said, "We can't come over there."
Really?
And you know, well, why? And well, we just don't. We stay on our side of town, and so this is 75, 76, which no, yeah, 75 probably, and. So, and they just said, you know, y'all made us feel so important, you know, and it was nothing
Yeah,
to us. It
yeah.
was just treating people the way you treat people.
Exactly.
And but little stories like that they share with me, because I was just told this one about 7 or 8 years ago.
Oh, so you didn't know?
No
in that-
no
during that
idea,
time.
no
You had
idea,
that you
no
were
idea. They
making
never
that
said
kind of
anything.
difference.
And but when they shared that with me, you know, it was, and this of course has nothing to do with me, but they had such a kind respect and gracious attitude towards my parents, you know, for that. And again, it was nothing, but it was such a positive thing
Right.
for them. And I love when I get to run into them and see them, and sometimes they'll share a story like that with me. But
That just goes to show we never know
you
what
never
kind of
know.
difference
That's
we're
right.
making
Right. The
in
little
someone's
things.
life.
The little
Yes.
things. Because again, we never thought anything about it. But
You were just doing your life,
Yeah.
doing what God
Yeah.
taught us to do, and to
Yeah.
love everyone. And
yeah. So
That's such a great story.
Then my kids getting to grow up and both in Greenville public schools, and then my last 2 spent a few years in Greenville Christian School. Even though they graduated from there, they didn't start there. But just the relationships that we have with our kids' teachers that we still have, and the admiration that we have for them, and And then, you know, my two daughters both started, once they graduated college, started teaching in GISD. And my older daughter has gotten married and has moved to Arlington area, and so she doesn't teach here anymore. But so just, you know, Greenville hasn't changed in like certain ways, I guess you would say physical ways. I mean, downtown looks a lot like downtown did when I moved here a long time ago. There's not a lot of difference, honestly.
Right.
Some buildings might have a little, you know, I mean, there were different stores in there. And of course, there was, you know, Sears and L.O. Hammond's and Joel's Menswear and John's Shoes, all this stuff.
Right.
That's not there anymore, but the buildings are still the same.
Right.
And so a lot of these things, these physical things, the streets, you know, I still basically know every street in Greenville because I've lived here for so long.
Yes.
And but some of the people I just have so much respect for that have, you know, maybe moved in here and they've made Greenville their home. You know, I mean, we kind of did that, but I was a third grader, so for me, this is home.
Right.
But I love when people just move in and just jump in and make this their home, and they make Greenville better.
Yes.
And I love the areas of progress that we get to see. I love when old things are, you know, refurbished. So I love a lot of things that are going on in downtown. And but I mean, look, for me, it's always about people. And the thing that I love about Greenville is the people. And that's such a cliche thing to say. And I bet every video that you ever interview, everyone has said that.
It does come up a lot.
Yeah.
But it's important.
Yeah.
That's what makes us stay.
Yeah.
We can live anywhere in the world
Right.
we want to, but we all choose to stay here.
Yeah.
And it does have to do with our relationships and our people.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I get to see, you know, some of many of my high school teachers, they've passed on, and so but every now and then I still get to run across one or whatever, and you know, sometimes I get to do things, you know, like you know, baptize their grandkids or something like that. Those things are just they're super special, and then, you know, to just get to see those people again, I can't imagine at this point in my life, you know, like moving somewhere else and not knowing anybody.
Right.
You know, I mean, now there's the fishbowl part, you know, for
Right.
us, because everywhere we go, I know somebody, and sometimes I don't know where I know them from.
Right.
Because, like, if they come to our church and sit in the balcony, they know me, but I don't know them.
Right.
And because a lot of times they'll come in a few minutes late, and then they're out, so we may never actually really cross paths. So when people look at me, I know that look of, I know you, but I'm like, I don't know you.
I don't know you. Yes.
Or I know a face, but again, that face could be from anything over the last 40-something years. And maybe I coached their kids in Little League stuff, or my kids went to school with their kids, or they were a teacher. You know, I just never know.
That's why you have to always be on your best behavior.
Always have to be on my, that's actually very true. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I told you at the beginning, I wanted you to pick a number between 1 and 20.
Okay.
And that would be your final question.
Okay.
So what is your number?
7.
7. Okay. Number 7. If you could have a superpower, what would you choose?
Invisibility.
Oh, you like already know that.
Did
you know what
these
number 7 was?
No.
Okay.
No, I picked number 7 because that was Pete Maravich's number. You don't know who that is.
Okay.
So when you told me earlier between 1 and 20, I was thinking of professional athletes that I might want to pick their number, and I went to Pete Maravich, number 7. So I knew 7 from the beginning. This is a discussion we have at our dinner table.
Oh, okay.
And we actually just had it last Thursday night or Friday night.
Really?
Yeah, so Parker's girlfriend was in, and we were having dinner, and so we're kind of introducing her to some of our family routines, and one of the things that we would often talk about, among many, is, as an example, if you could have any superpower, what would it be? And so I chose invisibility because, well, for multiple reasons, but one simply being is you can be anywhere at any time, hear anything, whatever. So, and you know, if we're living in the world of superheroes, you also have to have bad guys, and if you're invisible, the bad guys can't see you.
This is true.
So you can always just sneak up behind them and choke them out, or whatever you need to do. So, whatever. So
I love that. The pastor just said, choke them out.
choke them out. That's right. If they're bad guys,
If they're bad
choke them
guys.
out.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Paul, for sitting down with
Absolutely.
me. I really enjoyed it. There were pieces of the story I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so I know others will enjoy getting to hear more about your story.
Well,
So
I hope so.
thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for watching Heart of Greenville. And I want to give a special shout out to our sponsors, being REMAX 3D Real Estate and Triton Networks. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching Heart of Greenville. This video series, which is designed to celebrate Greenville, Texas, is spearheaded by REMAX 3D Real Estate.